بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم آمين وبعد. We continue Safinatun Najah with the Sheikh, written by Sheikh Salim ibn Abdullah al-Hadrami rahimahullah ta'ala wa nafa'na Allahu بعلومه وعلوم مشايخنا في الدارين آمين. Last night we spoke about the rulings of tayammum and wiping in replace of wudu. We also spoke about wiping the socks and the ruling of wiping the socks. We also spoke on the topic of wiping the cast or a band-aid or any kind of cover, anything that covers the skin that prevents the water from reaching the skin. And so I wanted to just kind of revisit the topic of wiping the cast. We said that the Shafi'i school, regarding the cast, they require, if a person has a cast on an arm, a leg, a feet, whatever it might be, they wash all the limbs they're able to wash. And this can be for wudu or for ghusl. They have to wash everything they're able to wash. And so the part they're not able to wash, they can put a bag over it so it doesn't get wet. So if a person has a cast on their arm, they can put a bag over it so it doesn't get wet. They take a full shower. Let's say they're doing for ghusl. They take a full shower, and then they wipe that arm, and then they do tayammum. They also do tayammum along with that for that arm. So that's kind of the Shafi'i school. They require the washing, the wiping of the arm, for example, if the cast is on the arm, and they require tayammum along with it. And we said that the Hanafi school, I misquoted them. The Hanafi school's position, and this is actually the majority opinion, they say that the tayammum is not a wajib. They say that you just wipe. And so you wash what you're able to wash, and you wipe the part that is covered with a cast or with a band-aid. So if a person has a band-aid on their arm and they're not able to remove it, let's say they have a large cut, or they broke a finger, maybe they have something on their finger, the tape that's taping their finger, or they have a cast, all of these things qualify. Or it can just be like some type of maybe like ointment to treat a burn. If a person has a burn and they can't wash that, then they simply wash everything they're able to wash, and then the part that they're not able to wash, they wipe it. And according to the Hanafi school and other schools as well, the wiping is sufficient and no tayammum is required. Some of them, they differentiate if you put on your cast with tahara or not. They say if you put on with tahara, then you don't have to do tayammum. And so there's some different, but we can just go with the opinion that, and this is the kind of, a lot of times it's more easier to practice, and so it can be adopted as a rukhsa. If a person is in a hard position and they're injured, and so they can just wash what they're able to wash and wipe the limb that they are unable to wash. Wallahu alam. Any questions about the cast? We spoke about this yesterday, so I wanted to just kind of really revisit this topic and correct it. For the brothers who were here, or sisters, if they want to submit a question. Any question about wiping the cast or the band-aid or anything of that sort? All right. Tonight, our ahkam is actually about najasa. And so we're going to get into the types of najasa. The author, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, وَالَّذِي يَطْهُرُ مِنَ النَّجَاسَاتِ ثَلَاثَةً. There are three types of impurities that can be purified. And this is the Shafi'i school. The other schools there are schools that are more lenient, and contemporary scholars are more lenient, are inclined towards those opinions. And we'll say why. In the Shafi'i school, they say there's only three things that are najas that can become pure. They're najas, but they become pure. What are they? Wine that becomes vinegar on its own. Wine that becomes vinegar on its own. Although the wine is najas, If wine sits for after a time, or not every type of wine, but it's after a while, if it converts to vinegar on its own, they require that it converts to vinegar without any kind of addition or additives. If it converts to vinegar on its own, then that vinegar is tahir and you can consume it. But if you add additives or anything of that sort, they say no. It has to convert on its own. The second, the hide of a dead animal that is tanned. So a dead animal, what is a dead animal? This in the Quran is mentioned a lot, right? حُرِّمَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَةِ. What is mayta? A dead animal is any animal that is not sacrificed according to the requirements of Sharia. Is a dead animal. Even if it was somebody actually sacrificed it, let's say an atheist sacrificed an animal. He slaughtered the animal. It's a dead animal. It's considered a dead animal. Somebody electrified the animal and they died by shock. It's a dead animal. It's mayta. A car struck an animal. It's a dead animal. It fell off a cliff. It's a dead. All of these animals are called mayta. They're all mayta. They're all considered dead animals. So dead animals are najis. Their blood, their meat, all of it is najasa. You don't eat any of it. The only part, and you don't use any of it. You dispose of it. The only part of the dead animal that is purified is the hide, which is in the skin and the fur. The skin and fur can be purified by tanning. If you tan it, right, and that's how we get leather, right? We process it, we tan it, and they use additives and so on to, make it more effective, and, it goes through many cycles of purification. Then that skin now is pure. Also, except a pig and a dog. So the hide of a pig and a dog are not purified. You can't purify those two. Except outside of those two animals, any other skin can be purified. So it can be alligator skin, right, more expensive quality, right, products. It can be just typical leather. Leather also is very expensive, right? If you want to get, if you just want to get a leather sofa compared to, right, non-leather sofa is a couple $1,000s difference, or even more, right? A leather jacket versus a non-leather jacket, like, and this is real leather, 100% leather. It's significantly more expensive, right? So all of this, although the animal is mayta, once the skin is tanned, it's halal. It can be used, and it's tahir. You can pray with it, sit on it, use it, so on and so forth, right? And so again, the Shafi'i school, this is the only thing they allow. They don't allow anything else to be purified. They're very strict because this is the nas. They said the nas was narrated regarding these matters. Anything beyond this, you have to do qiyas. You have to do ijtihad. And the Shafi'i school, they're very strict with it.
How about the animal dead on the sea?
No, sea animals, remember, sea animals we said, huh?
The bird, dead on the sea.
Yeah, bird that dies, birds are part of land animals, so if they have to be slaughtered. If they're not slaughtered, it's mayta. So if you found a dead bird or a duck, and it wasn't slaughtered, it's a dead animal. It's mayta. And so any cause of death to an animal that isn't by slaughter is considered mayta. You cannot use it, eat it. It's najis. The only thing you can use is from it is its skin. The skin can be tanned, and then you can use that for whatever purpose you want. Again, this is according to the Shafi'i school, which is it is one of the more strict schools when it comes to this issue. We'll get to the madhahib or the opinion that is more lenient, and that majority of our contemporary scholars, or at least the fiqh councils and so on, that they adopt. And the third thing they mentioned, the author mentions, creatures that are born out of filth. So he says like bacteria or worms that are born out of filth, they're pure, although they came out of najasa, the insect or that worm is considered pure. So the Shafi'i school, this is it. Now, in the other madhahib, they say they have something called istihala. And it's not every madhab, but it's a strong opinion that our contemporary scholars adopt. What is istihala? Istihala is for something najas to go through a transformation that changes its biological or its makeup. Its makeup is transformed. It's completely changed, right? And so istihala can happen in many ways. For example, you can filter. Right now they have water filters that filter dirty, filthy water, and they filter all the najasa out of it, and they reuse that water for certain purposes. They may use it for agriculture or whatever reason. That's istihala. That is a form of istihala that other scholars permit, and our contemporary scholars permit as well, or at least fiqh councils they adopt, and so this is permissible. Another type of istihala that is relevant to us is enzymes. And our enzymes oftentimes are taken from pig, they're taken from beef, from cattle, and they are used in a lot of the snacks and foods that we eat. Right? A lot of the chips that you eat that are common, Cheetos, and a lot of these different foods, you also see like, certain types of enzymes that they use. And most of the time these enzymes are taken from cattle or from pig, because that's like the staple meat of and the most common meat and abundant meat is pig and beef, right? In the U.S. is pig and beef. And so they usually use one of the two. And so, and according to Sharia, that these are najis. They haven't been slaughtered accordingly, so they're najis. So now, the argument that a contemporary scholar is making, this is a classical opinion. They say, no, this went through istihala. It went through a transformation that changed up it changed up it went through such a transformation. What we're looking at today has no resemblance or very little resemblance to what it originally was. Does that make sense? It went through such a transformation, it doesn't resemble anything of what it originally was made from. And so therefore they say, similar, and then how did they come there? They said, look at, for example, vinegar. They said vinegar came from wine, right? Certain types of vinegar came from wine. And with additives, it was completely transformed, and now you have vinegar. Although this vinegar came from a source of that is haram, but it went through such a transformation, it has no significant qualities that is resembling of wine. And so therefore it's halal. So that's a form of istihala that the Sharia affirmed. So then from there they made qiyas. They said any type of istihala where the object went through such a change that it's no longer resembling its original source, and it has its complete kind of a new makeup now with additives and so on, that this thing they say now is pure and it's tahir. And so enzymes are one of those things that are generally applied. This is applied to. Now the issue of gelatin comes up. Has gelatin went through enough of a transformation for it to be considered istihala? And there were two councils of fuqaha that did research on this. One council came to the conclusion, they said yes. So there's a fiqh opinion among contemporary scholars. They say even gelatin, it went through a transformation that there've been so many additives and changes to it that it doesn't resemble what it was originally taken from. They say it's permissible, right? The second opinion, they say no, gelatin still has a strong fatty resemblance of what it was taken from, and therefore gelatin, they say, is not like enzymes. Enzymes is a lot smaller, and the transformation of it is a lot stronger. Therefore, istihala applies to it. But for gelatin, they say no, it still has very strong qualities of what it originally came from, and therefore they don't permit it. So within contemporary scholars, the kind of right now, at least within our community, the gelatin is haram. That's kind of like the predominant opinion, that gelatin is haram. There are within other kind of communities and scholarly groups that say, no, even gelatin is halal. It's been transformed. You can eat whatever type of gelatin you want. You don't have to worry the source of it. That's a more lenient opinion, and there were a group of scholars that adopted that. And so, but it seems like the kind of the more contemporary or the majority of scholars are leaning towards the second, that gelatin's transformation is not sufficient enough for it to be halal. And so therefore they say gelatin, you can only eat gelatin that is from halal sources or from vegetables and plants, from plants. And so they permit this type of gelatin. Other than that, they don't permit it. And so that is kind of the opinion that I personally adopt, that gelatin of gelatin is the istihala of gelatin, the transformation of gelatin is not sufficient enough to make it halal. And therefore we shouldn't eat gelatin unless we are sure this gelatin is sourced from plants or from a halal source. Make sense? Now there's one last mas'ala regarding this. Is the gelatin from beef? We know gelatin from pork is going to be haram. The gelatin from beef. And so the beef of Western nations, contemporary America, Europe, and so on, is their beef permissible or not? And this mas'ala is strongly debated. There are those who argue these people are Ahl al-Kitab. And there are those who argue, they say, listen, it's just a cultural identity. They have no significant attachment to their faith and practice and adherence to it. What meat of Ahl al-Kitab are you referring for? It's a secular nation, and they apply secular laws. And even those who are Christian, they're Christian by culture, not by faith. It's more of a cultural identity rather than a religious identity. Right? They celebrate Christmas and all of this, but it's more of a cultural celebration. And so a lot of scholars, they say, no, these people are not Ahl al-Kitab, that the meat is permissible, and so they don't permit their meat. And there are others who do permit it. It's strongly debated within contemporary scholars. I personally do not eat and permit it. I say it's highly doubtful. Do not eat the meat or chicken of non-Muslims, regardless of who they are, where they're coming from. It's all the same. And I don't say it's haram, but I say it's strongly doubtful, and it should be avoided. Wallahu alam. And so that is it for istihala and regarding gelatin, enzymes, and those masail. Any questions about this? Tafaddal. Sorry. Chick-fil-A would be the same thing. Although Chick-fil-A is a Christian-owned restaurant, from what I've read, their suppliers are similar to other fast food restaurants. These restaurants, they keep their suppliers very confidential. They don't publicize where they get their supplies from. But from what I've read, it's very similar. So there are contemporary scholars who differentiate between chicken and beef as well. There are those who said that the chicken is less doubtful than the beef. And so they say you can consume the chicken, but don't eat the beef. And I know that was, I think, the position of one of our, I forgot his name. He was a well-known scholar and very knowledgeable in Oregon. So I think he used to permit the chicken and not the beef. And so there are, and I've read some fatwas by fiqh councils that say that the beef is highly doubtful because of electrocution. So they, in their opinion, they consider Ahl al-Kitab. And they said the majority of these farms and what do you call it, slaughterhouses are operated by Christians. And it's sufficient that they call themselves Christian, and so we'll adopt it. And so they permit it. But then the issue they have is they say that they use electrocution to numb the cattle and the chicken before that. They say a high percentage of the cattle die from the not electrocution, but from the whatever, the electricity, the voltage they're using, it leads to death. And if that was what kills the beef, it's meta, right? It has to be slaughtered. And so there are so many levels to it. Personally, I know there's a strong opinion of those that says permissible. Yes, a lot of the slaughterhouses are operated by those of Christian faith, and so it has a strong argument. Although they have a strong argument, the argument again is that if you look at the United States, how many people are truly adherent to Christianity or even believe in Christianity, right? It's very conservative states and communities, and so how far do you want to extend that? And so for me, I say it's highly doubtful. Don't eat any of these meats. Don't eat their chicken. And that is the highest level. And this takes azima. This takes himma. You have to have azima. Maybe your iman is not that level yet, and you're like, man, that's too hard. I'm not ready to make that commitment. Then the second level would be, okay, the chicken, yalla labas, and avoid the beef. That would be the second level. And then the weakest one is you eat all of it. Beef, chicken, bismillah. You don't differentiate, And if you want to take that opinion, there is a valid opinion that permits that, but I don't encourage it and I don't adopt it personally. One differentiation I do make is with children. And so with children, if we want to have azima for ourselves and we don't want to eat any of it, we can. With children, if we're a little more lenient with them, I think that there could be given some leniency to children if they're going to public schools and so on. And so just to accommodate them. It's a rukhsa again. I don't encourage it. We know Imam al-Juwayni, rahimahullah, he said that my father used to make sure that everything I consume was halal. So one day I was breastfed. He's narrating a story that he was told as a child, by his mother or his father told him. He said one day I was breastfed by a woman who was babysitting me or was a friend of the family, and my father found out, and he made me vomit that milk as a child, as an infant. And the reason he said that, he said, I will not allow my children to eat anything that is doubtful, even in the smallest form. I don't know the source of that woman's food, and so therefore my children will not eat from any source of food that I am not absolutely certain is halal. Right? That's Imam al-Juwayni. He's one of the kibar al-fuqaha, and his father was a scholar as well, right? So there's the iman is levels, right? What we can handle is levels. So again, everybody, apply the fiqh accordingly to your himmah and discipline. And so these are just some levels. And so what you're able to adhere to it, inshallah, and be steadfast. And then you can be lenient with children more than you are with yourself. Karana and then Brother Laith. Tafaddal.
See, even about the vaccine.
Yes.
The salt.
Yeah.
And have they say like the stuff. Maybe
I mean, each vaccine has to be looked at independently. It's hard to generalize. So we have to look at each vaccine. What exactly are they using? And it's the process of istihala. And so fiqh councils have done a lot of research about this, and so I can't give a general fatwa about vaccines. Certain medications you can permit. With medication, something I avoid gelatin capsules. Right? Don't take gelatin capsules. I bought like Benadryl, and it had gelatin capsules. I didn't realize, and I couldn't return it. It was like on Amazon. They don't let you return, pills and medication. So I was stuck with it, So just, don't consume gelatin capsules. A lot of the protein supplements and stuff, and a lot of these capsules are gelatin capsules. And so if they are, make sure they are all plant-based. If you are going to consume capsules, make sure they're all plant-based. Amma for vaccines and shots, we would have to research each one independently, and now is not the time. But if you do have a specific vaccine that you want to ask about, let me know, and I can do some research on it, and then find out if there's been some research.
do they break down like the
Istihala. Yeah, definitely. They do definitely go through a process of istihala. Right? They're not taking raw product from an animal and giving it to you. It's going through a process, and there are additives and this and that, and there's even a medical benefit to it. So we're not going to, it does go through a process of istihala, but again, that istihala, it can be misused and abused. So you have to really look at each case carefully and make sure that the istihala is really a transformative one and not just really on a surface level or a minimum, you know what I mean? So each one has to be analyzed carefully. Wallahu a'lam. Brother Laith?
So two questions now. So for the vaccines, like do we have to, like, for example, I'm taking the flu shot, I have to ask for the brand and go ask Sheikh about that specific brand before I take it?
Generally, I would say no, but out of tawarru', right? Tawarru'an, you should, right? So wara', there's something called zuhud, wara', and I guess taqwa is below that, or right? So wara' is that you don't consume anything unless you're absolutely sure it's halal. Yeah, that's wara', right? Zuhud is you don't consume anything unless you need it unless it's a necessity. That's the highest level of iman. You don't pursue extra money, you don't pursue extra pleasures. You pursue from the dunya the 1 fit, 2, 3 fits you need to survive, the basic home you need to live, enough money to survive, and you focus the rest of your time on the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the zuhad, these are ubbad, these are people who devoted themselves to the worship of Allah. Below that is wara'. And wara' is also a high level of iman, right? Where like Imam Juwayni, his father, he's like, and Sayyidina Abu Bakr, right? Like they had this quote, they would not eat anything, consume anything, unless they were absolutely sure it was permissible. Then the level below that is what generally is permissible, the fatwa. And so if you want to take your vaccine and you don't want to ask questions, bismillah, go for it. There's no haraj, generally. There's levels, right? There's levels. So it is permissible. It is permissible, I would say, in a general sense. But it would be more cautious to do our research without also falling into too much waswas. We don't want to have too much waswas where it's debilitating, where you can't really do anything because everything is doubtful. And today, with everything in the world, I mean, it's impossible to have a pure halal life, right? You can't escape. You can't escape some type of fee. You can't escape some type of interest-based contract. So it's very complex. You can't escape banking and financial institutes. So it's to a certain degree, we also don't want to have waswas and overburden ourselves. So I would say we can do some research, inshallah, maybe, and search. I'm pretty sure there's like a concise fatwa, and inshallah we can share it for the benefit of everyone, inshallah ta'ala. But generally, from what I know, vaccines are generally permitted. There are specific types that are debated. And so those ones, inshallah, we can search just for our own safety and knowledge. Wallahu alam. And another one?
Yeah, that was.
Okay.
So the question for the scholars who allow chicken and do not allow beef.
Yes.
What did they say about the lamb?
The lamb is, I think, from what I know, is similar. Because the voltage to the beef, because the voltage they need to use for lamb and beef, and even goat, is a lot higher. And so the probability of it dying by shock is a lot greater. And so it's still, they're saying don't eat it because the shubha, the doubt is very strong. They're not saying haram. They're just saying the doubt is a lot stronger than it is with the chicken. So that's why they make that distinction, right? That's why they make that distinction. Tafaddal. Camel meat is permissible as long as it's slaughtered properly. Or so as long as it's slaughtered. And then this is, we don't have the time now. What are the types of animals we can eat? Generally, we can't eat anything that has claws, fangs, right? And so that's just a general rule. So we can't eat, lions, tigers, hawks, eagles, things like that have claws, fangs. And there's ahkam as-sayd, and so there's rulings on rulings on hunting and animals and the types of animals we can eat. And so camel, lamb, goat, sheep, chicken, duck, birds, all of these are, even like horses are halal, even hyenas are halal. There's a lot of, you don't have to eat it, but just what's halal, what's haram. The scholars, they say if a person was to eat horse, if it was something customary in a society, they say it's permissible. So I think horses, I know horses are halal, I don't know about, but yeah, anyway, there's a whole discussion about the types of animals you can eat and you can't eat. Deers are halal, wallahu alam. Yes, one more? We are on page 28. All right, so that's about, istihala and the transformation of najasa and becoming halal and pure. The next ahkam is about najasat, and inshallah we're going to just conclude with najasat for tonight. Najasat, he says, rahimahullah, and najasat thalath, that the types of najasat, this is on 29. Impurities are of three types. Mughallada, heavy, mukhaffafa, light, and mutawassita, moderate. All right. So, and then he says, heavy najasat is the impurity from a dog, pig, or their offspring. So heavy najasa are dog, pig, and anything that comes from a dog or pig. Or that's born from a dog or pig. Light najasa is the urine of a baby boy, which only feeds on milk and is not yet 2 years of age. So an infant or newborn baby boy that only feeds on milk, his urine is light najasa. It's considered light najasa. And so some people ask, why boys and not girls? The hadith said that. It's explicit hadith. Yurashu bolu sabi wa yuksalu. It's something like that. You rinse the urine of a boy and you wash the urine of a girl. And so the hadith was very explicit about it. And so the scholars, they divide the urine of an infant boy and a newborn as being light, but on condition they're under the years of 2, and on condition that they only feed on milk. And I remember one of our scholars, he said there was a scientific research done, and they found that, subhanAllah, the urine of boys it's the bacteria level or the concentration of bacteria is significantly less than that of the urine of newborn or infant girls. And so they said, he said there is actually some scientific, biological finding to show that there is a difference in the concentration level of urine between infant boys and infant girls. So it isn't some type of preference of both boys over girls, but it's just something that, there is a wisdom and hikmah, and it's sufficient. قال Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. Khalas. We don't need to debate over that, but we can also benefit from the wisdoms of modern studies. And all other impurities are considered moderate najasat. What are all other impurities? He mentions them over here on footnote 59 on page 53. Example of a moderate impurity are urine, blood, pus, vomit, wine, any liquid intoxicant. So any intoxicant that is liquid is najas. Not like other types of drugs that are not liquid, they're not najas. Wedi and medi. And so we talked about those two. Wedi is najasa that comes after urination. It's a strong type of fluid that comes after urinating or fatigue. And medi is pre-sexual fluid. Slaughtered animals that may not be eaten. Right? These are animals that have been slaughtered, but they're not halal to eat. Like a tiger or a lion or a hawk. Somebody slaughtered it, but it's still meta. It doesn't change. Or unslaughtered dead animals. Those are also types of najasa. So we'll suffice with that. Pus is a type of najasa. So all of these are considered moderate najasa. Vomit is also a najasa. The vomit of children, of babies, is not najasa. I think in the Maliki school, they say it's not najasa if it is, because new children, infants, toddlers, they vomit a lot. And they say, so if the milk hasn't really changed significantly, it's not najas. But they say if their milk has transformed and they actually vomit, like, and you can see the kind of the change in it and the smell of it has changed, then that vomit is najas. And so with that, rukhsa, especially with newborns, with parents and mothers, and the kid is always vomiting, your clothes gets dirty, and so we don't want to make it a mashaqqa for them. And so inshallah with that, just the vomit that's najas is when it changes significantly. Otherwise, inshallah, it's not najas.
So does it apply to adults? Sometimes you eat a lot, you pray, or you sit down and then something come out, but
if it doesn't come out your mouth and it's up to your throat,
what if you were praying, while you're doing sujood?
Yeah. If it comes to your mouth and you swallow, then it's considered swallowing in prayer.
Like you swallow it, but not intentionally.
If it's accidental, no.
It goes up and down.
It goes up and down, right? Yeah, it's kind of like a reflux, right? And it goes, that one, no. Because la yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wus'aha, right? You have no control over it, right? So that one, there's no control.
And wudu was also if it goes all the way, but you swallow it, you have to wudu?
You don't have to do wudu. We said for wudu, vomiting doesn't break your wudu, and bleeding doesn't break your wudu. We said that what breaks your wudu is a najasa, anything that exits from the private parts. And we talked about this 2-3 nights ago. Anything that exits from the private parts. So gas, urine, stool, even blood, anything that exits from the private part breaks the wudu. But najasa coming out of your nose, a bloody nose, or a cut, or vomiting doesn't break your wudu. Vomiting doesn't even break your fast, unless you do it intentionally. And on condition you don't swallow any of it back. So if a person vomits while they're fasting, it doesn't break their fast. On condition, it's not intentional, and they don't swallow any of it back. Wallahu alam. Did I answer? Yeah, alhamdulillah. All right, so we have those 3 levels of najasat. Now he's going to talk about how do we purify najasat. And this is important because, especially if you have a toddler, your kid might pee on the floor. And you're training them, potty training them. And so how do you clean that? If you have some blood spilled on the floor, a kid wet their bed, somebody threw up and they threw up on the floor, and they, subhanAllah, they have a fever, right? Winter flu season. How do you clean up these najasat? What do you do? And so he says, rahimahullah, that the najasat are 2 types. Heavy impurity. We read that. Okay. Heavy impurity becomes pure. Heavy impurity becomes pure. This is the najasa of dog and pig, by removing it and then washing it 7 times, one of which should be with earth. So heavy impurity, this is the najasa of dogs and pigs. The dalil only says the najasa of dogs. But a lot of the fuqaha, they did qiyas. They said the najasa of a pig is as bad as that of a dog. But technically, the najasa of a pig, there's no explicit hadith. From what I know, it's qiyas. They did analogy. They made the najasa of a pig like that of a dog. So these two najasat, how do you wash it off? You wash it off by 7 times, one of which should be with dirt, with earth. And then in the footnote, he says, earth cannot be substituted with something else like soap or detergent, etc. And then he says that it is best to use from what I know, and I did confirm, you can use the dirt. The way you use dirt is you mix up dirt with water. And so you're washing 7 times. One of those times is dirt with water. You scrub on that spot. And then the other 7 times can just be water. Is that sufficient? And so this is how you clean the najasa of a dog or a pig. Faisal, you had a question? Yeah, so this is an interesting mas'ala. What is najas of a dog? Is it the saliva? Is it the hair and the fur? And so in the Shafi'i school, they say the entire dog. But the hadith only mentions if the dog licks or eats from your container. It doesn't mention the actual, like from what I know, it doesn't. إِذَا وَلَغَ الْكَلْبُ فِي إِنَاءِ أَحَدِكُمْ. If a dog licks your container, then you should wash it 7 times, one of it with dirt. So it's the saliva that's mentioned. The Shafi'iyya, they expanded that to the entire dog. But a lot of the other scholars, they said no. They said that they didn't expand it to the entire dog. They said only the saliva is najas. So they said if you were to touch a dog physically, it's not najas. You don't have no najasa. But if a dog licks you and its saliva gets on you, then that is the najasa that you have to wash 7 times. And that's where the dalil is. And scholars getting out of that khilaf is best. But if a person, for whatever reason, still has a dog, then at least avoid their saliva. Or at least as, I don't know, their family members or co-workers, right? Today is like, especially in Seattle, right? We're dog. Our city, we love dogs. Dog would touch you, right? Run into you. Yeah, so in that case, if they don't lick you and they just like rub you, if you're not sure, you're tahir. You have to be certain. Al-shakku al-yaqinu la yazulu bi-shak, as they say. They say certainty is not removed by doubt. So if you're not sure, you're tahir. You have to be certain that the dog licked you. If the dog's saliva got on you, then at that point, you wash it. At that point, you wash it 7 times, one of it with dirt. Imam Abu Hanifa's madhab, from what, if I recall correctly, he says that other chemical substances that are purifying can take the place of dirt. From what I know, that's what I recall. I haven't read this. This is something I'm remembering from years ago. But from what I recall, he permits that in his school. So that is an opinion. If a person maybe is in a difficult position and they want to take that as a rukhsa, they can take it as an ease. But it's not something that I would encourage. The hadith said 7 times, so I would say let's stick to that. But if there is a difficult circumstance, you can just wash it off with any sufficient, detergent and whatever you need, and put it in the washer, and that's sufficient. And so that can be adopted as a rukhsa. Wallahu alam. I think you had a question, and then Brother Laith again.
Yeah, just really quick. So, let's say I go to the park, right? And the dog licks my pants.
Right.
If I put it in the washing machine and dry it, the pants are still impure. I have to sprinkle dirt.
You have to sprinkle some dirt on it. Yep, exactly. You have to sprinkle.
Dirt into the water and then let it go.
I would say sprinkle dirt onto the pants before you put it in the washer. And rinse it 7 times outside of the washer. And then put it in the washer. That would be the most, cautious according to the hadith. Because the washer washes once with soap and water and then rinses a second time with water. So technically it's only washing 2 times. Right? The washer is washing twice. So to get that 7 count, you would just wash that single spot. Like it licked you on that area, just put some dirt on it, pour some water 7 times. Literally just pour water once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, you're done. And then bismillah, toss it in the washer. You see what I'm saying? So that would be the kind of the appropriate way to wash it. If you were to take the rukhsa of the school of Imam Abu Hanifa, you add detergent and whatever cleaning, washing, things, then that's sufficient. And you can just maybe do an extra rinse to make it 3 times. And I think he requires that it be 3 washes, if I'm not mistaken. Again, this is something I read long ago, so I'm not absolutely confident of it, but this is what I recall. Brother Laith, and then I'll come back here.
Well, I don't know. Someone once told me, he was not a sheikh, so I don't know if you've ever heard this opinion.
Yes.
So he said that the hadith was specifically about licking And it was not associating the lu'ab specifically with najasa, but rather, but the scholars take it to the najasa, but it could have been for health reasons or whatever.
Yeah.
So according to his, I don't know whether he brings opinion, but according to his opinion, like,
Yeah.
if you lick your clothes or whatever, it's not necessarily najasa that you can't pray with it. So just because, like the hadith specifically, if you look at it, he's like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard this.
I haven't heard that specific argument. I know in the Maliki school, they don't consider dogs to be najis at all, not even their saliva, in the Maliki school. So and their hujjah, they have a hadith to support that. They said that the dogs used to enter and exit the masjid during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So there's a hadith that shows that dogs were common and they used to like roam the city and even the masjid at times. And so the Malikiyya said that dogs were common and there was, they weren't washing the masjid floor every time they did it and so on and so forth. And so in their school they say dogs are tahir and not najis at all. So I know that. And I know a lot of our Maliki scholars adopt that. Our Maliki countries adopt that. And a lot of converts that have dogs and, transitioning to like getting rid of a dog maybe is difficult. A lot of fuqaha tell them, yeah, the dog is tahir. Don't worry. Keep praying your salah. La haraj alayk, So I know that opinion can be given to those who maybe struggle with, they have a dog and transitioning out of getting of a dog is a lot harder for them. Or they have a service dog, and so they can adopt the Maliki school. That is specific reasoning, though, saying that the licking was for health reasons, not najasa reasons. I haven't heard it. It's difficult because the Prophet ﷺ, he commanded it to be washed. And if something has to be washed, it's najas. You see what I'm saying?
He said, according to him, because it was associated with a dish.
For hygiene.
Not like if you lick anything, if you lick anybody's
dish, right? Like it's specific to like consumption, not to najasa.
But he might be wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I haven't heard of it, so I don't know. Maybe there could be opinion, but if it is, it's a very, very minority opinion. Because I know the fuqaha. Maybe his own opinion. I don't know, or somebody contemporary. I don't know. Yeah. But I know the madhahib. It's kind of three positions. You have the position of Imam Malik, which is the most lenient. Is dogs are tahir, and they're not najis at all, and there's a hadith to back it up, and they used to enter and exit the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, and so they're free. You can use them, touch them, hold them, and then they say, why do we have to wash? They say we do it ta'abbudan. We do it just to obey the Prophet ﷺ, but they're not najis. They do that that's their kind of their argument. But the scholars have criticized the Maliki school for this, but again, it's the opinion of the Maliki school, and it's official opinion. The second opinion is the Shafi'i school, which is the entire dog, and I believe the Hanabila as well. They say the entire dog, hair, skin, fur, saliva, all of it is najis, and it has to be washed 7 times. And I believe the Hanafi school, they say najis, but it doesn't have to be 7. They say that's fine and recommended, but sufficient is enough to remove the najasa, and any kind of cleaning, chemical would suffice. And so that's kind of the madhahib from what I know. This opinion about the rationing of food, it could be an opinion, but Allahu A'lam, I don't know. I don't have knowledge about that. There was a question back here?
So he asked why saliva,
Why the saliva of dogs? I heard there was a scientific study, one of our mashayikh, mentioned. They analyzed the saliva of dogs, and they found that there's, they did like a study. They tried cleaning the saliva of dog with like, cleaning chemicals, whatever, soap, this, that, and they tried with dirt. And they said that they found that dirt has certain elements, that it has elements to kill certain types of bacteria in the saliva of dogs that other chemicals cannot do. So there's something unique about dirt and its ability to kill certain types of bacteria in the saliva of dogs. So there's some scientific argument. I don't know how strong that study is, but some people quote that. So that can be mentioned as a reason, but sufficient again is like it's the Prophet ﷺ said it, so we should adopt it. Now, understanding the reasoning behind it, that's an advanced scholarly topic. And so my personal, kind of what I adopt for myself, I don't touch dogs. I don't try to avoid them, but if I do come into contact by it accidentally, I do, if it's saliva, I have to wash it off 7 times, 1 with dirt. If it's not saliva, I don't burden myself too much. I just remove the fur off my clothes and continue with my day. So that's kind of my practice. And so you guys are free to adopt what you want and what is most practical for you. We don't want the deen to be a really extreme, difficult burden. For those who are born in Muslim families and raised in Islamic families, it's a lot easier. But for those who converted and transitioning, or they still have non-Muslim relatives, and they all have dogs, and it can be a lot harder. And so for those people, they have the option of taking the rukhsah of these other madhahib. So we give sti'a. We don't want to push the people away. We want to, alhamdulillah, accommodate them. The differences of our scholars are a mercy. Wallahu a'lam. Have I answered, Ahmed? You just wash it off. Yeah, you just wash it off. Yeah, 7 times. Yeah. And subhanAllah, the accidents of dog biting their owners or their owners' children, you always hear stories about it. So it's not a safe thing as well. It's not something safe to do, especially for children. Yeah. Okay, so we said, how do we clean heavy najasa? We said it. Light najasa, you simply, what do you call it? The urine of an infant boy that is under the age of 2 and only drinks milk, will be purified by removing the actual impurity. So what you do is that you dry the urine, right? If you have an infant boy and they urinate on the floor, dry the urine first, you dry it, and then you just rinse it with water. That's it. For light najasa. You dry it and just rinse it with water, and that's sufficient. You don't have to scrub. If it's for an infant child, you can scrub, you can use, cleaning chemicals, but do you have to? You don't have to. You just dry it and pour water on it, and khalas, that's sufficient. Make sense? And so he says here, the amount of water sprinkled should be greater than the amount of urine. Right, so the amount of water should be greater than the amount of urine, and that's sufficient. You don't even have to dry it after that. You just pour it, and that's sufficient. Make sense? The moderate najasa, impurity, is of 2 kinds. That which has a substance and that without a substance. All right, so these are 2 types of najasa, and we're going to go into each one. That which has a substance is that which has a color, smell, and taste. It is necessary to remove its color, smell, and taste. Right, and so so this is urine, blood, pus, vomit, right? And so how do you remove the color, taste, and smell? Step 1, dry the najasa. The first thing you do when a najasa reaches the clothes, the floor, whatever, you should dry it. Once you've absorbed most, the najasa, this is all najasa. We're done. We're past the little boy. Now we're talking about moderate najasa. Step 1 is you dry it.
How you dry it?
Paper towel, a cloth, whatever reason, right? You use something to wipe it off, and dry it. And then, so here we'll read the footnotes before we continue. He said, it is wajib to remove all of its taste, even if it be difficult, and to remove both color and odor, and smell if not difficult. If any of the smell or color alone is difficult to remove, okay, we'll suffice with that, inshallah ta'ala. Yeah, so we said first you remove it, you dry it up, and then you pour water over it, and you use cleaning supplies. You can use soap, you can use whatever, to kill the smell and the color of it. Right? You use some soap, and then after that, you dry that up, and then you rinse it with water. And then that's how you purify. So it's kind of a 3-step process. Dry it, wash it with soap and water, and then rinse it with water alone.
How about you don't know where, the baby,
Then if you're sure they had najasa, but you don't know where, or maybe they were walking all around the house, then you have to do your best to figure out where the najasa is. So you make a best judgment, and then you wash it. For potty training is a burden. Potty training and najasa it is difficult because they're having accidents all the time. And so it's important to know how to properly clean it. And when they do pee on the floor, you have to track their steps, dry it all up, wash it with soap and water, and then rinse it afterwards.
So what about non-solid surfaces like in the car and the couch, like the sofa?
Yeah.
It's hard to reach down, right?
So with the sofas, you just clean the surface level. Because whatever is below the surface level, it's not going to affect you. right? You're not praying salah on it. It's not going to make you najas, right? So you just clean the surface level and that's sufficient. Another option that scholars mention is to dry it in the sun. So like if they wet a mattress or something, just dry it in the sun. And that's, one way like classically they used to do it. A lot of our contemporary scholars, and even in some of the madhahib, they mention that you can use any cleaning substance because what do you have to get rid of? The smell, taste, and color. So anything that does that is sufficient. Anything that does that is sufficient. So according to that opinion, now this gives us a little bit of rukhsah. The Shafi'i school is what? Dry it, wash it with soap and water, and then rinse it, right? A more lenient opinion is you just dry it and then wipe it down with any type of chemical. Get some Clorox spray. The Clorox wipes you can probably use as well. You wipe it down. It kills 99.9% of bacteria. Khalas. Of course, it's not all the same, but that's sufficient. And they say why? Because the chemical is probably more efficient in removing the najasa than the water would be. So they're using this ration to justify that, right? So this is a rukhsah that parents can adopt, and especially if you have children, because that's the hardest part. I think is with younger children. With adults, it's like okay, you clean and so on and so forth. If an accident happens, vomit. But with children who vomit on the floor, they wake up middle of the night, throw up in the hallway or in their bedroom or on the rug, or they're potty training and they have an accident on the floor. Well, dry it and then get some type of just cleaning supplies. Kill the smell and the color and the odor of it, and that'll inshallah kill the taste and any taste of it as well, because the chemical is a lot stronger, and that's sufficient. And so that is an opinion that's outside of the Shafi'i school. That's valid to adopt. Wallahu a'lam. Does that make sense? Yeah. So cleaning supplies are sufficient and can take the position of water. The Shafi'i school, they say la, it has to be water. وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً طَهُورًا. They said, but water was brought down to purify. So water has to be the final element that purifies the najasa. So they're a lot more strict with water. But other schools have permitted chemicals to be used, and they use other dalil to back that up. And there's some dalil to back it up, and there's a strong argument for it. Wallahu a'lam. And then the last mas'ala about najasa, he says, that which has no substance is one that does not have a color, smell, and taste. It is sufficient that water flows over it. If there's a najasa, I don't know if he gives an example here. He doesn't give an example, but if there's a najasa, I can't even think of one right now. Najasa that has no color, taste, and smell. I can't think of one right now. But if there is one, I'm pretty sure there is. The fuqaha wouldn't mention something unless they have scenarios in their mind. Then you just simply pour water over it and that's sufficient. Wallahu a'lam. Is that clear about najasat? How we clean najasat?
Even like that one, right? So couple days, like food is dry out and still like matches, like you don't want to spot, you know what I mean?
Or describe that to me again.
Okay, like the baby, right? Say pee somewhere, right?
Right.
That you don't know, then okay now a week, so that area is still
najas. It's still najas. And every time people step on it with water, the najasa spreads. So you have to wash najasa immediately. I know people take it oftentimes, especially parents who are potty training, they just take it lightly, but it's a serious matter. And so, because tahara from najasa is a condition for the validity of salah, right? And so you want to make sure that you purify any place where a child urinates, vomits. Don't delay it. It should be washed as soon as possible. If it's a large area, it's hard to track, then I would say get like maybe a carpet washing service. Let them wash everything one time. Now you start fresh, reset, reset. So that's what I would do. If it's like overwhelming and you don't know where and what and how, then at that point just get a carpet washing services, wash everything one time. And inshallah, whatever happened in the past, afallahu amma salaf, may Allah forgive what happened in the past, whatever mistakes happened. And then from there, inshallah, you just try to do your best to manage things. And again, I know for parents with young children, the burden is there, right? For somebody a lot older, it's a lot easier to manage, right? You just manage yourself. But when you have children, it's a lot more complicated.
So is it, like, are you obligated to clean the najasa, or is it just
You could, but the problem is, can you just leave najasa sitting? Are you obligated to clean najasa? لذاته or لغيره, right? Either للصلاة or for itself. From what I know, that the fuqaha, they say tajannub al-najasa is wajib. A lot of the fuqaha, they say avoiding najasa is obligatory, because you're always supposed to be tahir, and you're supposed to keep your home tahir. So that is an argument that a lot of our fuqaha make, and I think it's in the Hanbali and Maliki school, Shafi'i school. Somebody says like, "Ya Sheikh, can I touch the dog?" And then, but wash my hands after. Immediately, I'm gonna wash my hands after. They say it's najas. You shouldn't normalize touching najasa. You see what I'm saying? You shouldn't normalize touching najasa. And so here, the same thing could be applied. Although it's a requirement for salah, but you don't want to just normalize najasa being, in the home and not washing it and so on and so forth. And so that. But if it's a burden, if you have, subhanAllah, you have young children, 3, 2, young children, and it's exhausting, and you're working, and, you're working remotely, and sometimes it can be exhausting, then the most important thing is knowing where it is, and then making sure that, if anything, that najasa doesn't spread, and that salah is not made there. That would be kind of the most important part of it, inshallah ta'ala. Does that make sense? Have I answered all the questions regarding najasa? And inshallah, gave everybody practical ways to purify najasa in their homes, and inshallah to the parents who are listening also, inshallah, they have some practical ways of how to purify najasa, inshallah ta'ala, and still potty train their kids without being overwhelmed by their accidents. Yeah, you wash your hands. So if the dog licked you, though, I wouldn't, as long as if it's licked you, then you wash your hand with dirt and then run water over it 6 times, and you're good to go.
Depending which mazhab you follow, right?
Yeah, it depends, of course. Again, so this is according to what I personally adopt, and it's the Shafi'i school. The only thing is the Shafi'i school is a little bit more strict. They say the entire dog, and personally, I say the saliva. The saliva is where the najasa is narrated, and it's a strong opinion among the scholars, and that's what I personally practice. If you're going to go Hanafi, and you just wash it off, Maliki, you don't need to do anything. Bismillah. They say you're still supposed to wash it off ta'abbudan, but it's not najas. You can make your salah is still valid, and things like that, right? So for them, they say, we don't know the reason. You just do it for ta'abbud. You do it to follow the hadith. Simple. That's the only reason. Wallahu a'lam. Make sense? Yeah. Inshallah. Generally, I tell people to we shouldn't pick and choose between madahib, but rather stick to one kind of code of fiqh. And then on masail that you feel haraj and difficulty, take masail that are opinions that are easier on a specific masail. But it's not you don't want to just kind of cherry pick different opinions every time, because that leads to subhanallah, it leads to an abuse of the deen. Because every time there's a masala, and you're like, I want to take the easy opinion, what happens? You make everything halal. And so in the Maliki school, dogs are halal. So you're like, okay, khalas, dogs are halal. And so, they even say eating dogs are halal. In the Maliki school, consumption of dog is halal. So somebody says, well, I'm going to take that opinion. Another opinion in Imam Abu Hanifa's school, they say interest in non-Islamic lands, or lands that are harbi lands, according to however you define it, they say interest in those lands are halal. You can deal with interest as much as you like. So you say, okay, bismillah, I'm going to take all the haram, all the interest loans, so you take that one. In the Shafi'i school, what is it? I think in the Hanafi school, you don't need a wali for the woman. So any sister can marry herself off to any man. So khalas, everybody gets married on their own. Who needs the family's permission? So somebody goes with that, right? Another opinion, they don't require 2 witnesses. I think Maliki school doesn't require 2 witnesses. So somebody says, okay, khalas, I don't need witnesses, I don't need wali. Me and the girl get married, bismillah, we're done. We don't need anybody. So when you cherry pick fatwa like that, you abuse the entire deen. And so it's a fisq. The scholars say it's a major sin to kind of cherry pick fatwa like that according to desire and pleasure, and there's kind of no discipline in what you're following. You're not following no sheikh, you're just following whatever is easy, right? And so And so that is generally discouraged. But we generally follow and teach the fiqh Shafi'i. But I'm Shafi'i as well. But masail that are difficult, that is haraj, and circumstances, or is not practical and sometimes not pragmatic. Those masail, inshallah, there's rukhsa and we can adopt opinions outside of that for circumstances. Does that make sense? And also use it for people according to their iman, right? If you see somebody struggling, give them the easiest opinion. Bismillah, brother, don't worry about it, right? Bring them closer. New Muslim, take it easy, right? Take it easy on the people. So adopt that ease, inshallah ta'ala. We have one last section, but I don't think we're going to read it tonight. We're supposed to read about menses in the next, get into salah, but it's late as it is, inshallah, so we'll save this for tomorrow night. And then, inshallah, tomorrow night we'll read over the menses briefly. It'll be very short and brief. And then we're going to get into salah. And salah, inshallah, is very important to know the ahkam of salah, and so that our salah is done with knowledge and validity, inshallah. We'll do that tomorrow night, bi'idhnillah. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.